Hey everyone, this is Michael Cole, VP of Marketing at Everflow. Today I'm joined by Dan Alexander, and we're going to be talking about how does a modern ad network succeed? So as always, we'll start with some quick fire questions. So Dan, what is your role at Bold Collective?
Yeah, Michael, first off, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. My role at Bold Collective, I'm the CEO and founder of the business.
What led you to create it in the first place?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I've been in digital ad tech now for this is my 20th year, believe it or not. And I've had the pleasure of working for various different startups sort of in the industry. I've also worked for some bigger, kind of more corporate companies, all within ad tech. And I sort of felt like, after 12 years of being in the industry, there was an inflection point sort of in my life that I've kind of been lucky enough to be part of these companies and sort of seen them being built from the ground up in all aspects of the business, from an HR stance to engineering, product sales, business development, media buying, etc. That I wanted to try to start something on my own. And, previous to starting this business, within the last 3 years, I really had a focus on video, and that's and we'll get into that, sort of where the start of the company came from. And I had a business partner at the time that really was focused on video, so we thought we could do something dangerous in the world of video, and that's sort of where we started. I always wanted to do something on my own, and I think a lot of companies or a lot of people just don't start. And so we took a leap of faith. It was the right time, and ended up working out.
Yeah, and I think we'll revisit this a lot throughout the conversation, but I think one of the fascinating things about the ad tech space is how many different types of advertising channels do you think you've worked with in those last 20 years? If you could just throw out a ballpark number.
All of them. Yeah, I mean, not to date myself, but let's call it the internet's been around all the late 90s, probably even before that, right? I got into internet advertising. It wasn't even something that I studied in college because it wasn't really available. I graduated in college in 2003 and took, I think, 1 or 2 digital marketing classes. It was called digital marketing because advertising didn't exist. So there was guerrilla marketing, right? There was email and search, which I think are very legacy mediums that are still flourishing. I've dabbled into that. I did a lot in video. We do audio, we do connected TV. I've done affiliate, media buying, all different aspects. My career's, most of it's been around the ad network space, the idea of the ad network business model. But yeah, there's all different facets and creative types within ad networks. But yeah, I think I've dabbled into a little bit of everything.
And it's also just a reflection that there are times when things are good and times when things are bad in ad tech. And you really have to roll with the punches because the skills you have last year may not hold up.
Yeah, it's good to get well diversified, right? Especially, whether you're a business owner or not, right? Just knowing, when it comes to brands have the biggest challenge, that there are so many mediums and how they spend their budgets and how they attract their users or do branding objectives. That's changed and evolved massively over the 20 years that I've been doing this.
Cool. And what initiative did you focus on the most this week?
This week, so we just wrapped up Q3. We had a good quarter. We're just talking about that offline, right? So we wrapped up a good quarter for the company, where we do a thing called rocks, where we set everybody's goals for the quarter that are quantifiable, that help achieve the bigger gross profit target for each division and the company as a whole. So we just finalized all that literally yesterday. So we like to do that usually within the first couple of weeks of the new quarter so that we get a better idea of projections and budgets. And then I always look a quarter ahead. So hiring, sort of determining revenue and gross profit targets for the next year, what bodies we need to put in place where, what initiatives we need to put in place. So Q4 is a busy quarter for us. We've got the regular business to run, and goals to hit, but we are always planning for sort of the future and what's next for the business. So a lot of that.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons I was excited for this conversation in the first place is that I get a chance to talk to a lot of networks, and so many of them are sort of like either burning out or sort of at the end of like wanting to do it anymore. And I have always appreciated about you how every time I talk with you, there's some new initiative, some new thing you're testing, you're making scaling up some stuff that's really working. And the combination of fresh and focusing on what works has always been something I admire.
Yeah, well, I think I appreciate that. It's always good to think, and I hope that I stress this to our company and everybody that works here. You got to think the way the brand thinks, right? We're not the brand. An ad network works for the brand. Our job is deliver results, whatever those results or KPIs or end objectives are for the brand. And to think one step ahead so that they consider us a valuable partner is something that always keeps me up at night, right?
Mhm.
If we're doing the same thing that my competitors are doing, then what makes us different? And the ad network space is sort of an interesting area of the ad tech ecosystem that you have to add value. So if you keep thinking ahead or being innovative, that kind of keeps you going.
Cool. And how did you get your start in the industry in the first place?
Yeah. So not to go too far back, but studied marketing and public relations and communications in college. Got lucky enough that I got a job with Red Bull, which at the time was the only energy drink. Now there's 1,000 of them. That led me into working for Warner Brothers in their guerrilla marketing team, which led me to working for a rep firm startup, and then into an ad network. So really internships that led into things that kind of got me hooked into the world of digital media, which again, 20 years ago was much different. And I never went away from it. I've been in this industry, I've dabbled into other industries from an investment and advisory standpoint over the years, but I got hooked. The idea of just results based advertising and digital's the best medium to do so, got me hooked. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be part of some pretty interesting startups where I learned a lot about the industry pretty quickly. And that helped me kind of get to, I guess, where both Bold Collective and my career is.
Awesome. All right. So let's hop into some more long form questions. So first off, when you started the ad network, what was like your first service offering?
Yeah. So I previous to Bold Collective, I worked for another company that had a big mobile video division. And I was lucky enough that at the time when we started the business, I had a co-founder at the time who was fantastic, really well connected. We thought we could do some pretty interesting things around the mobile video space. At the time, now 7.5 years ago, mobile was really a hot new medium. The idea of monetizing apps that were ad supported was fairly new. The idea of SDKs was fairly new. And the idea that enabling video creative within SDKs was almost brand spanking new. So building an ad network model around the mobile video space was pretty interesting. So that was our first foray into the business. We probably did solely mobile video for about the first year and a half.
And why did you have to evolve past that? Why not just that one thing?
Yeah, I think it was not being forced necessarily to, but listening to our customers, right? Listening to our brands. I think when it came to mobile and video at the time, video was mainly a brand awareness mechanism, whereas now I think it bleeds into performance, which we can get into because the video creative has evolved with playables and all that stuff. But we had customers wanting us to do performance-based budgets. And we didn't really have the means to do that. And that was one of the reasons why we launched, one of our divisions called Open Media, was to focus more on working with brands directly and more of the performance side, the app install side, the post-install side, which at the time we were only doing sort of branding objectives. Here's creative, deliver against my set audience, and deliver some sort of click-through rate or completion rate of this video. So listening to our customers and realizing that we're sort of already in the mobile space, from a technology standpoint, it wasn't a big move. A pitch standpoint, it wasn't a big move. A little bit different of a clientele, but oftentimes you're talking with the same set of buyers or a different group within that buyer group, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And just as a kind of tangent, but I always found it fascinating in the ad network world, how there was always like a large part of ad networks that was working with other ad networks, and both as buyers and sellers. does that still exist? Is that still a key piece, or do you feel like that's becoming rarer and rarer?
I think what's becoming rare and rare is the ad networks that add value, right? There's a, I think we'll talk about like the idea of starting an ad network and what should we pursue, or what value can be created from that. There's a lot of ad networks that do a lot of great things. There's a lot of ad networks that have been around for 10, 15, even longer years that have evolved. There's a lot of ad networks out there that don't go to market as an ad network, but if you look under the hood, they're an ad network. So just, I guess it depends on how you define it. To us, we're in the mix of that. There's a handful of, especially on the affiliate side, affiliate networks that become the agency of record, or have unique budget that we can't get elsewhere that we'll work with, and vice versa. We become the agency record or have big budgets that we can't deliver, and we need other networks that are friendly, that are trusted partners in the space, that have a niche or something that can help us, do right by our clients. So I think a lot of that has sort of fizzled out over the past years, and there's been some unfortunate things with COVID and everything around that. But strength in partnerships is key, right? And having trusted vendors, trusted clients goes a long way when you're talking about sort of the network to network space.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting corollaries too, because we've been exploring a lot on the B2B ecosystem side and B2B partnerships. And even if you look at companies like, say, Microsoft, within that ecosystem of their like go to market for how they actually get new customers and everything, they have this huge ecosystem of what are essentially networks, where they're basically like connecting different services together and selling different things for Microsoft. And I think that no matter where you come from, it ends up being that you need that outside expertise, and everyone gets their core specialties, and it's the working together, and where is the brand dollars and where is the fulfillment of those brand dollars.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Cool. So can you run me through sort of what are your core offerings today?
Yeah, so like I said, we've sort of evolved over the years. We go to market as a growth marketing company today. We've sort of settled on three major areas of growth marketing: mobile, which we sort of alluded to, connected TV, which is sort of what's evolved from our legacy business of mobile video, and now audio. So connected TV, audio, and mobile are sort of the core focus of our bold collective business. Mm-hmm. We're thinking about other sort of mediums going into the new year, but for right now, that's kind of as much as we can handle.
Cool. And are you seeing some like major values from having three completely separate propositions? What is the advantage of doing that over just specializing on one?
Yeah, I think two things. One, externally from a buyer standpoint. So whether we're dealing with the brand or their respective agency or their respective agency trading desk, having sort of multiple tentacles, if you will, of what we can sell to them and speak to, having an in at multiple groups at the agency level or at the brand level always goes a long way. Whether or not they're spending across all three different things that we offer or just one, it happens over time. But, not being sort of a one-trick pony, not that there's anything wrong with that, but oftentimes we'll get shut down from the mobile side, mm-hmm. but we'll win them on the audio side. And that's really just listening to the customer. We had a good conversation with a client the other day that we were going in and pitching them mobile, and they basically said, we're planned out for Q4, which is a pretty common response. Mm-hmm. So we asked them about what they're doing with audio, and we got them live in a week through their agency trading desk, and now they're spending money with us on audio. So I think if we didn't have that offering, we wouldn't have won that business. And now from a sales perspective, with that same client, I'm going to talk to them about mobile come Q1 because they're not planned out. So I think that helps. And then from a business stance, having multiple revenue streams, we treat those as different revenue streams helps, because if audio is down one quarter and mobile's up, that helps sort of keep the balance with goals. And there's cycles of this industry. CTV is hot, right? A lot of people are talking about it. Every year, it seems like it's the year of CTV. Every year, it seems like it's the year of mobile. The proof's in the pudding for us, right? Like some years, connected TV is our biggest line of business. Other years, it's mobile. Other years, it's audio. So it's nice to have sort of that diversification. And it opens up a lot of doors to new clients, because there's clients that I couldn't have talked to a year ago, but now I can because we have an audio offering, which we launched a year ago, right? Or, we launched mobile 5 years ago, or mobile performance 5 years ago with open media. We couldn't have those conversations with brands before because those budgets were going through agency trading desks or other ad networks, if you will. So yeah, it definitely helps in all those aspects.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So one thing I remember with connected TV that, at least when I was looking at it, it was very Wild West. Has it become more standardized? Is like dealing with fraud and everything still a big part of it? How has that market evolved?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've got our point of view, and that's our point of view, right? Our history, Bold Collective's history in connected TV it's been the Wild West. It's been a whirlwind. Our first foray into it was we tried to be a publisher and build out our own connected TV apps, mainly within Roku. That's something that was very unique to us, and we didn't have much experience in. We built a bunch of apps. We tried to grow them and monetize them. Becoming a publisher in an owned and operated property is not easy, right? And you sort of can't do it on the side, which is kind of what we were doing. And we quickly found out that the connected TV space, most of those budgets still today come from linear television, which are a lot of one-to-one connections. So the idea of packaging up a group of connected TV channels and reselling it back to brands, call it that, the ad network model, it's tough, right? I think, we have a challenge, and there's a finite group of buyers that we found that are looking for audience, and that's our sell. Is, if you can prove that all your apps are direct to you and that they're completely brand safe, so they don't get flagged by all the different brand safety vendors, that's a must have. So that's easy for us because we've been doing it for a long time. But the idea of selling audience versus an owned and operated property, and all the flexibility you have with doing it, if I'm, X property, I can sell individual shows, individual parts of my channel, whereas the ad network model is not as flexible. So yeah, and brand safety is always an issue. I think brand safety is pretty uniform across all of our mediums. That it's an issue across the board. But we've got tons of best practices in place that we tend to be pretty bullish on our brand safety practices that haven't got us into too much trouble over the years.
Yeah, and you make the effort to keep it clean, which is
all
most people really want, is someone actually putting the effort in.
Yeah, and that's when the topic of an ad network, when it gets brought up to brands, it's a gray area. Some brands love them, some brands don't, for whatever reason. Oftentimes it's because there's ad networks out there that are doing things wrong, that don't care about brand safety, and they're looking to make a quick buck, and it ruins it for the rest of us that are actually adding value and caring about the brand and caring about things like brand safety, which is ever evolving. And brand safety for connected TV is different from audio, and it's different from mobile.
And on the CTV side, do you feel like the technology is like the platform solutions to actually manage that and sell this to advertisers? Is that pretty established at this point? Or does that feel like it's still even in the early days and you're still looking to test out new technologies? What are your thoughts on sort of how much more there is to go there?
Yeah, a lot more to go. I think there's been, we mainly partner, let's just talk about programmatic budgets in the world of CTV, since that's sort of our foray, right? So there's a DSP and there's an SSP, and then we're sort of stuck in the middle there as far as the sales house that's kind of selling at a certain rate and buying at a certain rate. We found that most major video SSPs have adopted into the connected TV space. Now they're all omni-channel, if you will. And there's a handful of connected TV only SSPs that are out there. They're all great. We try to do something with each one of them. And then on the DSP side, sounds like every major DSP supports connected TV from a creative type, and those pipes are pretty much in place. I think the major thing that we see as a challenge with connected TV is, one, our model, right, of being a network. So the idea of potentially exclusively representing inventory or owning properties via an acquisition or building them ourselves is always top of mind. And then second would be, I think performance and attribution are coming along, and we don't really, that's our core business on the open and mobile performance side. It's never a topic on CTV side, at least with the buyers that we're talking to, because a lot of it's just an audience play or a branding objective. But using CTV to drive an app install, right? That's interesting to me, right? Using CTV to traffic or to measure foot traffic in retail destinations, right? That's interesting to us because that kind of brings in the performance element to it. We talked about things like even like putting a QR code on a video creative to track something, right? Whether it's a click or how many people are, grabbing their phone and walking up to their television and scanning it, or scanning it from their lazy boy, or wherever they're sitting and watching the content. That's pretty interesting to us. So I think people say we're in the early days of connected TV. I don't think we're in the early days, right? Maybe we're in the red zone, right? And we're about to score, but it's in our best interest to continue to innovate on the connected TV space because we want more of those dollars shifting. I think we all read articles even today. Netflix is rolling out their $6.99 ad supported tier come November. That's massive for our space, right? That's connected TV. That could bring so many dollars in the connected TV space. So more of that is great, I think, for the connected TV space. But yeah, I mean, we could have a whole nother webinar on sort of connected TV. It's an interesting space for sure.
Sorry, one last question on the CTV side. What is the tracking ability right now? Can you place impression pixel? Is there any sort of outside tracking that you can do? Like, is there email addresses? Is there any like user identification where you can sort of see, hey, this user is here and they did this thing? Or is it just here, they clicked on this thing and they downloaded this app immediately?
Oh, meaning like from an attribution standpoint?
Yeah, because I was just thinking that if there's some way that you could track them there, then you could see if they went to the website or went to like a mobile web page or the app store, etc. But I don't know if there's any sense of any type of tracking at all that you can get on CTV yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak for us, right? Like, that's not our forte, and that's not the path that we go down when we're selling our connected TV offering. Ours is more of an audience play. So when they start talking about attribution and stuff, that's a little bit out of our wheelhouse. Oftentimes we become sort of an audience extension partner for them that they want to deliver massive budgets across an audience. There's tons of advancements in CTV around those two things that you just mentioned, how measurement and performance. And I see it and read the articles and talk to friends in the industry that are solely focused on it. It's tough, right? Because you're talking to a lot of buyers that have been in, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but have been in linear and TV for a number of years, that are used to sort of the ways that things are doing, and we're trying to fix that really quickly. So yeah, things like impression tracking are there. Things like, how do I see if that user, like things like view through attribution, right? That's a big topic. Like, okay, how did this person install the app? Was it because they saw this commercial last versus they saw the audio ad or the mobile ad? So view through attribution, I think, is there, and connected TV is there, but there's a lot more work to be done, right? But it's got to be uniform across every DSP, SSP to trade it programmatically. All the major publishers have to adopt it and push it so that brands recognize that that's a new way to measure sort of whatever performance metrics they're looking at.
Cool. Yeah.
It's definitely got a long way to go.
A long tangent, but let's get back to the network side. But there's definitely interesting things there. And it's always fascinating with these conversations because there's always just so many corollaries between different completely separate verticals and the sort of challenges they have, and sort of where everyone needs this kind of thing, but they need it in a way that fits within existing businesses.
Sure, absolutely.
Cool. So what would be your advice for someone who's thinking about leaving their company and starting a network?
It's an interesting time to leave a company, right? But yeah, I think, look, if it's leaving your existing company or doing something as a side hustle or thinking about starting your own business, if you feel confident enough to be dangerous to do it on your own, and you're financially set that you cannot make money for a little bit of time, right? So there's payment terms and there's a ramp up period. And you feel like whatever you're going to get into adds value to your end customer or your end client or the brand or the agency that you're working through, if that's sort of what you're going after, then heck yeah, right? If you're looking to be sort of like, a mimic of a lot of the companies that are out there, it's going to be a struggle, right? Unless you've been doing this for a while, right? If you're new to the industry and you think you're ready and you want to take a leap of faith and you've got a business model and plan and think that there's value in that, then great. If you've been doing this for 10, 20 years and you've got a ton of connections and people that can support you and help you with the first round of clients and help you grow revenue, that's even better, right? So my 2 cents would be, if you think you have a niche or you think you have value to add, and you have some sort of support mechanism to get you there, so it's not just you, then absolutely go for it. And if you've always wanted to start your own thing, what better time to do it than now?
Yep. Although I think you make one really good point that's always important to mention is know what payment terms your industry pays.
Yeah. We, not to deviate from the conversation, when we started the business, so we're a bootstrap company, right? We've never taken an outside dime in the 7.5 years. And that's been one thing that we're pretty proud of. Not that there's anything wrong with raising capital, right? We just never had the need to, but yeah, the first 6 months, no salary, right? Like, and every dime that we made was put towards the business. And then we hired a team from there, but you got to be flexible with that. So and you got to realize net 30 terms aren't always straight net 30, right? And you're extending credit to a company that you cross your fingers that's going to pay you. So working with the right customers, like your first 10 customers are very important with whatever business you're starting, right? Because that could make or break a lot of companies. That they take a leap of faith, they don't get money for first few months, maybe 6 months, maybe even a year, and they're banking on the fact that that company is going to stay in business, right, and pay what they owe you on time and accurately. And that's a challenge, right? Like, maybe not to go back, but yeah, we had the luxury that we had good accounting. We still have a good accounting team. As a business owner, I had to learn QuickBooks pretty quickly and how to invoice and what cash flow means and what accounts receivable and payables and vendors and clients and all that good stuff. But you got to learn that stuff pretty quick. So I think there's more of like, if you're going to start an ad network, there's the business side. So if you're just good at like making publisher and advertiser relationships, that's easy compared to like actually running the business.
Yeah, and the business side matters because I mean I've definitely experienced where you get net 60 terms, your advertisers actually pay you more like net 90, and you're supposed to pay your publishers net 60, and then suddenly you're constantly spending all your time just trying to assuage your like publishers, and you're behind on money, and it becomes a disaster. So the business fundamentals matter.
Yeah, and we've been part of that, in the 7.5 years and even prior to starting Bold Collective, being part of companies that have cash flow issues or companies that go out of business that can't front the bill, or there's a fraud thing that gets caught a year down the road or whatever it is. There's companies that raise a bunch of, they do money factoring, or they'll raise a bunch of money just for covering their receivables. So yeah, it's definitely not easy, but if you think you're ready and you think you can add value, then definitely go for it.
Cool. So a little bit more on the CTV stuff, just because I think as much as anyone about that, and it's a black box to everyone who's outside that world. So how did CTV even come into sort of being one of the core propositions? Like, where did that transition come from, and what were some of the early successes there that had you focus more on it?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. So I think being that we had experience with mobile video helped, right? And not to sound like we're comparing apples to apples by any means, like a mobile phone compared to a big 65-inch TV is a much different sell, and a different set of buyers. But, we're sort of in the middle of this OTT era where, every app is now consumed on every device, including televisions. And I think CTV is no exception to that rule. So mobile video, starting in that, I think the natural extension was into connected TV. And a lot of those budgets sat with the same teams. And a lot of the objectives were a little bit, not always the same, but often the same. Like budgets were fluid, meaning, here's 10 grand, you can spend it across mobile and connected TV, with the goal being, completion rate, or the goal being, I want to hit males 18 to 24. Those people live across mobile and connected TV. So that was a natural extension for us. We got in it, I wouldn't say early by any means, but, sort of at the earlier innings of connected TV, where the idea of an ad network was very new. And so that was sort of an uphill battle, which is why we started to think about the idea of building out apps or acquiring other connected TV apps. So it just becomes sort of a natural extension of the business. And again, going back to what I said earlier, listening to our clients, like they said, what about CTV? Like, oh yeah, what about CTV? And so that was sort of, I think we got into that space, call it about 4 years ago. So about halfway through our business.
Cool. I know that you're, I believe you're a Roku reseller. How did that relationship come about?
Yeah, so we have a division called Second Page. Second Page, the name Second Page is really on the second page of Roku channels that are really an underrepresented segment in our point of view. Roku today has over 19,000 channels in their channel lineup, but really, like, you and me can probably rattle off 20 channels. So there's a massive audience of amazing content across all different verticals and channels and genres that we wanted to help grow and help monetize. So through a partnership that we had with Roku, with CTV, and I've had this partnership with a couple of high-level people at Roku for a number of years. Partnerships go a long way. We pitched the idea of, hey, what are you guys doing with your Roku Ad Manager tool? Which at the time they were revamping. They rebuilt it about 1.5 years ago, of us being a reseller. And they thought it was a great idea. And so I would say that we're sort of the pilot or the guinea pig customer. Today they have 2 resellers globally of that platform, and we're one of them.
It's awesome.
So we saw that as a massive opportunity. One, now we can talk to all these, call it channel, 501 through 19,000, that, if they pick the phone and they want to get Roku's attention, Roku's got a lot on their plate, and they have only so many people. So a company that's nimble like us can help sort of this underrepresented channel mix. One, help them grow their install base. So that's really what Second Page's first foray is we act as their agency and buy installs or do brand awareness within the Roku atmosphere or ecosystem on their behalf. And then 2, because we already had this connected TV ad network or this connected TV marketplace, as their users grow, we can help them monetize with video ads. So it's an easy 1-2 punch. So, the partnership kicked off by just talking to Roku about it and just saying, hey, what if we became a reseller of this product? We've got this monetization arm already. We already do CPI for mobile. We already know how to run this business. Let's do it. And so we kicked that partnership off. I think it was about 1.5 years ago. And it's been fruitful ever since.
I mean, that's a super great place to be, because that also says there's so many companies that desperately need help to rank up sooner.
Yeah, and you talk about connected TV and being potentially the Wild Wild West. Sure, I think for the top, call it 500 channels, whatever those channels are, probably not so much. But for everybody else, I mean, these channels have been sitting on Roku for 6-7 years. That some of these channels, they're making $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. It's a nice little side hustle for them. But with a little bit of TLC and a little bit of money and growing their channel, they can double that overnight. And the idea of monetizing their channel, that's you're talking to, usually a team of 1 or 2 people. It's usually a developer and the CEO, and the CEO wears many hats. The idea of like, hey, I'm going to run this ad in front of your loyal customers, that's a tough conversation to have, because a lot of those guys aren't even monetizing. And we try to guide them on when is that inflection point when you start to monetize versus just have it be ad supported or not ad supported. And a lot of these guys still do the SVOD model where they're paying $1.99 a month to subscribe. So it's an interesting space for sure.
Cool. And for both CTV and everything else, how would you say that most customers discover you? How are you growing your customer base in terms of basically advertising buyers that are direct with you?
Yeah, so that's That's a big topic for us right now. We do a lot of marketing. We just hired a head of marketing. She's great. We're starting to do more conferences and get our sort of name out there. We're doing more PR, more things like this that hopefully get sort of more buzz around just the three areas of focus. And if that happens to roll to us, then so be it. We've got an internal sales team that's going after a set amount of customers on an ongoing basis. We've got our account management teams that are upselling and retaining, going after comparable business as well. With the Roku partnership, they refer us deals. So whenever they have a customer that is not a match for working with Roku Direct, they pass to us. We have other referral programs in place. We have a handful of advisors or consultants that work for us, either on a paid or non-paid basis, that refer us deals. So multiple ways to get access to buyers. And most of that is really just, we filter those out, right? Because we're not a fit for everybody, and they're not a fit for us at times. But it's good that the challenge that I gave to our team is we just need a constant amount of demand partnerships to talk to. Whether or not we work with all of them is really up to us and them at the end of the day, because we're in the business of creating lifelong partnerships with our clients. Most of our clients have retention rates of upwards of the entire life cycle of our business. So we want to make sure that they're a match. I hope that answers your question. Like, leads are coming in from all different facets right now, which is key for our small business.
I just always find it interesting to ask agencies and networks, because usually it ends up being that most of it's referrals. And it's hilarious how many marketing agencies in particular have never done a single cent of marketing.
Right.
But it's all referrals at the end of the day, and building good relationships, which makes sense, but is always funny as a mix.
Yeah, and we're a small company. Not a lot of people know about Bold Collective or individual divisions, and so a lot of it's referrals, or and it's referrals from other clients too, which is great. And some of our clients, if our point person leaves and goes to a different company, we'll retain that person because they love working with one of my account managers or one of our buyers. And that goes a long way, right? So, the idea of never burning bridges, killing them with kindness, all that stuff, like, it goes a long way, right? And so being a small business and not being, hey, we're so-and-so and we're a must buy, that'd be great, but we're just not quite there yet with each one of our divisions. We'll be there one day. But, yeah, and this will be a much different conversation, but yeah, we're pretty scrappy to get our deals.
Nice. And which of your service offerings do you think is going to be your biggest growth drivers for the next few years?
Yeah. Not to sound naive, I think all of them, and I'll just say for our business, right? We're small. We're 17 people across 3 of the fastest growing mediums of all digital, right? In our perspective. And, we've only done so much. Like, we haven't talked to, we've talked to X percent of each of the buyers in each respect. We have mega growth plans for mobile. Mobile is a pretty interesting space with things like SCAD and SCAN and Apple and Google privacy that a lot of businesses have been hit from. Connected TV, like you said, is still in the sort of the earlier infant stages. So I think there's a lot of upward momentum. Audio is booming for us. The idea of digital audio, streaming radio station, podcasts, I feel like there's more podcasts and great content launching every day. More great mobile apps coming out, more budgets floating into mobile, more budgets floating into connected TV. So I think upward momentum. We're in the midst of those planning stages of where we're going to invest the most time going into the new year. And the answer so far is all of them. Mm-hmm. We'll see where that nets out. We're, from a team standpoint, we're much more team focused on mobile. A majority of our team is on the mobile side. It's a much more hands-on, detailed business than some of the programmatic side of connected television and audio. So I think from a team standpoint, we'll probably invest more in connected TV and audio, but look at mobile as sort of other ways to sort of grow mobile and that mobile offering, if that makes sense. But yeah, lots of upward momentum in all of them, which makes it super exciting. It's not a stagnant space, right? To think that we can't double the business year over year, for being a small business would be naive.
Yeah, and it's always good to be on the ones that are growing rather than are struggling and changing rapidly.
Right. Exactly.
Uh, so question on the audio stuff in particular, with the audio networks, do they have the ability? Sorry, I keep asking this. Do they have the ability to do impression tracking?
Yeah, they do.
So you could do basically ad buy in a podcast, fire the impression tracker at that point, and then technically track if that user then goes to the advertiser's website, right?
Yeah. So I'll say this, in our experience in audio, and we've been in audio for about a little over a year. I think actually, sorry, let me correct that, 2 years. It's funny. I was talking to a friend the other day. I was like, yeah, I saw that guy 2 years ago. No, it was actually 6 years ago. I feel like my mind was boggled a little bit. Yeah. So we've been in the audio space for about 2 years. Um, and it's very similar to connected TV. So we house both our connected TV and our audio offering under one division. Then we also have a self-service audio advertising platform that we recently launched called Audio Spot. And so things like performance and attribution are sort of in the similar stages of connected TV, probably not as far along, because you're talking about terrestrial radio budgets that have been around for 50 years moving into digital audio. And so a lot of it's branding, a lot of it's built on like promo codes still, right? It's like Joe Rogan saying, hey, go download this app and get promo code 1234 so that they get attribution. So a lot of promo codes are still in the audio created themselves. But we're starting to engage with some of the bigger MMPs around attribution around audio, just like we are with CTV, but we're in the very early stages. A lot of that sell for us is still branding, where it's more about showcasing that you hit a certain segment of audience. Addressability comes up a lot, proving that you're showing ads to males versus females or age ranges or whatever sector or psychographics or geographics that you're looking to target. But yeah, it's not as far along as like mobile is, that's for sure.
Well,
yeah,
so the reason I asked that is because
impression tracking a lot.
what?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna say impression tracking comes up a lot for sure.
Yeah. So with like CTV, obviously the difficulty is that a lot of times the CTV is completely separated from your other devices.
Yep.
You're watching it on your smart TV or whatever, but at least it fills with audio in particular. If you're listening to a podcast, you're doing that on your phone. So I could see that you could set up like say an Everflow impression tracker as a part of that audio piece. And then you could have it set so that for the brand advertiser you're promoting to, you have a bunch of events set up on top of their website. Because it's very natural. You're listening to podcasts, you're like, oh, I'll go check out to see what article does. And when you get to article's website, you could have the click tracking fire as soon as they get to article based on that impression. You would know the source already because you have the impression tracker. And then you could have events like went to their showcase, checked out their blog. And these are things that are not the purchase events, but show, hey, look at how much engagement you're getting from the impression to that initial like engagement events. This has been a big thing we've been talking with a lot of companies, is that rather than just look at sales and purchases, because a lot of times when you're listening to a podcast, you're not there to buy today.
Sure.
But if you're looking at just other places that they visit on the website, those are all events in our system. And those are really great indicators that podcast has driven engagement, even if that person doesn't need furniture today.
Yeah, we look at it as like, again, with the earlier question of why it's beneficial to have multiple sort of vehicles or different creative types. We look at it, audio as another way to drive that end KPI. And if that end is website visits to eventually a purchase or something to get that user into whatever sales cycle the brand is looking to achieve, whether we use audio, connected TV, or mobile to do that, we have that option, right? And not just saying for us, but the brand has that option too. And for all we know, one of our brands might be shifting all their budget into audio because they're seeing that audio drives the best performance for whatever end objective is. Yeah, and obviously, we're an Everflow client and love the platform today. We're only using it for mobile, so I think there's growth areas with our partnership with Everflow with how we can help kind of grow connected TV and audio. For us, being that we're a small company, it's rare that we're dealing with the brand directly. Oftentimes, because we're an audience play, a majority of our budgets come from agency trading desks.
Mhm.
whereas we don't have as much creative insight or know the end objective beyond audience targeting. But I can imagine everything that you mentioned is absolutely top of mind for them. And I think, again, you're talking to a lot of terrestrial radio buyers that wasn't the end goal
Yep.
before digital audio. And now it should be. So it takes time to sort of evolve. And it's good to know that, there's platforms out there that can support it for when the brand is ready to make those moves.
Yeah, and I do think that's a pretty interesting thing, just because it's straightforward. You're
Yep.
going to be listening to the podcast on a mobile device, and the nice thing is, if you do any follow-up actions, it's going to be on that same mobile device. So tracking is much more possible than CTV, where there's that big gap, and the only way you can really bridge that gap is if you can capture the email address of the user in CTV. Then you could bridge it into all the activities on the website and mobile, but that requires some way to have an identifier that connects the two systems. But for audio, it's much faster.
Yeah. It's not to go on a tangent here, but the audio space too, this is a topic that we're talking about and how it sort of bleeds into the other divisions for us is podcast installs, right? And that's something that I'm sure you guys are thinking about too, is like the app install space. There's also podcast app installs,
Mhm.
which are no different, right? But it's often like within a podcast listening app that they're downloading the individual podcasts. So there's some pretty unique stuff that individual podcasts are doing out there to drive audience when it comes to paid media, because a lot of that's just organic and word of mouth. Like, hey, I listened to this podcast, go download it, whatever mechanism you use to download it at. But paid media for driving downloads of podcasts is a pretty interesting space too.
Interesting. And do you know if there's any attribution there at all? Like, does Apple's podcast app actually provide any data out?
Yeah, I don't know enough to be dangerous on that topic yet, but we'll get there.
I think it's very new space.
It's new, right? Because then I think
Um,
a lot of these, a lot of companies are investing a lot in podcast advertising in general and growing their own podcasts. And a quicker way to grow is spending marketing dollars to grow. And I think they're figuring all that stuff out. We don't know enough about it, but it's definitely something that we're looking into down the road.
I definitely know that most things I bought have come through a podcast.
Yeah.
So it's a reflection of the time.
Yeah.
Cool. And then is there any technology or feature that you wish existed that would make it easier to grow your business?
Yeah. How long do you got? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
We got 10 minutes.
So I can answer that question a couple ways. One is, again, we're in our little bubble and we can see just, we don't know what we don't know kind of deal, right? So if we back up for our business, right, we started the business bootstrap and we licensed a bunch of tech, which a lot of companies raise money so they can afford tech and build tech, right? Because it's not easy to do while bootstrapping it. Now we had the luxury, we acquired a business last year that's a mobile ad server, and that's a big investment for us. In hindsight, I wish we had a bidder and an ad server when we started the business, because a lot of bidders and ad servers and SSPs and DSPs have been acquired or gobbled up over the 7.5 years that we've been in business, and we've had to pivot off different platforms over the years. So that would be something that I know exists, but doesn't necessarily a perfect fit for our business. That is something that I'm challenging our tech team with going into next year, is the idea of universal reporting. And I know that term gets kind of thrown around. My 2 cents on universal reporting is my small team spends a lot of time and effort logging into other client reporting systems for billing purposes, optimization purposes, pacing purposes, hours, right? Like, so the idea that there's ones, and there are companies that do this, but we just haven't found the perfect fit for ours. So we're probably going to build it, is a universal reporting tool that is a centralized reporting system that all my team logs into one system and they can see all clients' third-party numbers in real time. Now, I know that sounds, there's probably a lot of companies that do that already, and we're not unique in that challenge, or maybe we just haven't found the right fit or something that fits our budget. But that's something, right? The idea that billing doesn't take 3 days to do and that we can do it in one report. And that hooks into 60 different dashboards across all the MMPs, platforms, including Everflow, right? With that's easy because we've already got that API pressed into you guys and the clients that use you guys. But there's a lot of other platforms that are out there. So that's something that's top of mind that I wish we had that technology. We have billing people, right? And we have accounts payable people and accounts receivable. The billing process for us is a nightmare every year or every month. So that's something that we're thinking about, the idea of universal reporting, like one centralized reporting system to dominate them all. So the idea that we'd never have to log into another client's platform for reporting ever would be a great day.
Well, Dan, I have a great idea. You build that on top of Everflow, and then we have a upcoming payments solution that's in the final stages, and then you can actually just pay all your partners through our platform with no third parties involved.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we should talk about that. It's a problem, right? Like
it is. It's huge.
Yeah, we look at things like we're 17 people. How can we make the best use of our time? And the idea of billing and optimization and pacing, those are very important processes in the sales cycle or the customer life cycle of our customers, and we can't mess up. But that takes time. So just like if we could save, 40 hours a month, right, or more by building something that's more universal, we're all ears to that.
Not to mention the accounting stuff is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where things are owed to multiple publishers. You really want to have just one place for that.
Right. And then, other things to build, man, like, the idea that a lot of these SSPs and DSPs are getting gobbled up. Programmatic budgets are roughly half of what we do as a business. So we have to license tech to do that because we don't have our own SSP or DSP. That would be nice, but those are much bigger projects to kind of think about down the road.
How much longer can the SSPs and DSPs keep being acquired? It feels like they pop up, any of them that get traction, they get acquired like 3 years later, and then it's a disaster for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? There's a bunch of them still out there that are privately held, or there's a handful that are still self-funded. But you're competing with really big companies now, and it's a lot of it's kind of like the David versus Goliath thing. You're lucky enough that you get a seat on some of these. You're even more lucky if you get to be on that platform and run a profitable business on it. And if they get acquired, if you get to stick around, then you're even luckier. In our 7.5 years, we haven't been that lucky. We've been booted, not for bad reasons, but just a good old fashioned cleanup that we weren't big enough in whatever respect. So that's a challenge, right? So, going back to, I think one of your first questions on starting an ad network, pay close attention to the tech partners that you partner with, right? Like the partnership we have with you guys, I think now we're going on a little over 5 years. And I think we're one of your,
long time.
I think we were like under 25 of your customers. And, you and Sam and Ken War, you guys are awesome, right? We love working with you. That's pretty rare. And I think in this space that we've run a business on a platform for 5 years with no, and we're not slowing down, right? I think we're doing more together each quarter, which is great. But yeah, pick and choose your partners wisely.
Yeah, I mean, as there's you can't really do anything about it sometimes, because you can have a great partnership and then they get acquired and you get cut no matter what.
Yeah, but how good a partnership is that, right? Like, are you talking to the C-levels, or is it just you got an account manager? Are you one of their more strategic accounts? You might not be their biggest, but you maybe add something like value to their client that the new acquirer of that business, if I'm saying that right, goes, oh, they do something that's unique, that we want to tout for, whether it's Everflow or another platform. But yeah, it's definitely a tough part of our business, licensing tech and making sure that we can use that tech as long as we're in that business.
Awesome. And then just to wrap this up, is there anyone who, if they're watching us, they should reach out to you and explore opportunities? Who should reach out to you, Dan?
Yeah, so you can all reach out to me. Right? Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. Yeah, I think any brands that are focused around growth for either their mobile app, their podcast, or their connected TV channel, or they're looking to advertise in those three areas and looking at ideas of growth, growing your customer base, upselling your existing customer base, growing from free trials to paid customers. That's our forte, and using multiple different channels to do that. We're a small, nimble team, so we're very intimate with every single one of our clients. We try to squeeze every penny out of every opportunity that we get, rather than just being sort of a casual publisher. We try to be your biggest publisher, and we'll work night and day to sort of get there. But yeah, I think having nice conversations around the world of mobile connected TV and audio is always a win for us, whether we earn their business or not. I think down the road we'll earn their business, and we're not in the business of bullying anybody into getting budgets. So if they're looking to have intelligent conversations around those three mediums, reach out.
And for the audio side, is there specific verticals that you're seeing that's where a lot of the programmatic advertisers are, and that definitely seems to be the one that is increasing budgets?
Yeah, so it's a fairly new space for us, but we're reaping the benefits of political season right now. I think there's a guy that runs that team for us, and he gave me a stat the other day that 70% of what we're doing right now is in the political space. Very hot space. Prior to political, we did a lot in CPG and retail. And then a lot of our mobile business bleeds into audio. So a lot of streaming services are starting to take advantage. So streaming is in the streaming wars. I think they're taking advantage of all mediums to drive new customers, and audio is no exception. We also do really well in travel and food delivery, and fintech. So, we're not verticalized, but we just naturally see those budgets flow in, and those are pretty common verticals, but we've got sort of our niche in how we kind of execute budgets across those three mediums with each one of those categories.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah. Especially for fintech. I think that's one of our really strong verticals. So
yeah,
good job with that.
That's an awesome space. I love that space. And, that's a vertical, just like food delivery, right? That's very hot, and streaming, right? Those are really hot verticals.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dan.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts you want to leave the audience?
I think I've said enough, man. I'm probably sick of hearing from both of us, but no, again, Michael, appreciate the opportunity here. Hopefully it shed some light on some of the topics that we discussed, and look forward to doing more of this. And thanks again.
Sounds great.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.